Hello, friends. Welcome back. We took a break from the holidays, but we're back discussing poetry. And today I have my friend Varsha with me. Varsha, thank you for coming by.
Thank you for having me, Steve. I have wanted to read poetry for a long time, and I'm really glad that you started that thing on page tuning.
Yes.
I don't know how, but we're learning.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know how either, but we'll figure it out as we go. This one was a tough one. It's just so many layers to it, I think, that you can pull out of it. I think I guess that's kind of the point, is that there's so many things you can take away from it. There's just so many layers to it, and it depends on your perspective too. So it'll be fun.
Yeah. I always wondered, I know a lot of these, you're supposed to interpret how you want, especially with poetry. But I always wonder which one of the interpretations the author intended, or which several of the interpretations the author intended, or poet, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, this one. It's. I try when I first go through it. I try not to look at any other perspectives, and just try and take what I get from it, and then I read all of yours, and whoever posts on the threads on the forums. Mm-hmm. So it'll be fun to go through it.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think since there's two stanzas, I think there's two stanzas. But I usually go by stanzas, but I think this one will go line by line. So I'll go ahead and read it off first, and then we'll just go. We'll come back and go each line and kind of give our thoughts on each one. So this week we're doing "Mirror" by Sylvia Plath, and it's funny because when we posted on the forum, there's a lot of the people who usually have a lot to talk. Like a lot of them, this is too much. Like this, I don't even know where to start. So it worried me a little bit. But okay, so let's go ahead and. So if you are listening at home and want to kind of go line by line, so go ahead and pull it out with us, and I'll read it first, and then we'll go back. So the poem is. I am silver and exact. I have no preconceptions. Whatever you see, I swallow immediately, just as it is, unmisted by love or dislike. I am not cruel, only truthful, the eye of the little god, four-cornered. Most of the time I meditate on the opposite wall. It is pink with speckles. I have looked at it for so long. I think it is part of my heart, but it flickers. Faces in darkness separate us over and over. Now I am a lake. A woman bends over me, searching my reaches for what she really is. Then she turns to those liars, the candles or the moon. I see her back and reflect it faithfully. She rewards me with tears and an agitation of hands. I am important to her. She comes and goes. Each morning it is her face that replaces the darkness. In me, she has droned a young girl, and in me, an old woman, rises towards her day after day like a terrible fish. Yeah.
That's really something.
Yeah.
I had so many emotions through the reading of this poem. Not the first time. The nice thing about poetry, I suppose, is you can read it 5 times over in an hour. And this one, each time I understood more, I got more out of it. So it was amazing. I started almost feeling bored by it I ended up with, oh my God, I love this poem. I think this might be the favorite of the one we've discussed so far.
Wow. Yeah, this one I think is like a warm-up to next week's, which is Lady Lazarus. That one, wow. Mm-hmm. I haven't gone through it in detail yet, but that's something. So let's be good. Let's be a good one to start with. But yeah, it is. And reading it now again, after I have some time away from it, those two stanzas are very different from the mirror, and then we have the lake. So we'll go through that. Yeah. But so the first line, I am silver and exact. I have no preconceptions. So what are your thoughts on that first one?
So I think a lot of how again, this is how we read it after reading it multiple times, right? So the interpretation of each line is very much colored by what we know is coming, at least for me. So the silver and exact, since this is about a mirror, it feels, especially with the contrast with the lake later on, this feels like a very clinical statement of fact. I am silver. I don't have any preconceptions. I don't change anything that I see. And it also feels like the mirror is building up a bit of a defense for itself, because people tend to be angry at it for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I think kind of what I have written down from our first read is that, like you said, no preconceptions, which is the truth. But I think part of it here is what one of the questions I had was, whose truth?
Yes.
Because only the truth. I have no preconception. So is it what we want? Is it what we want to see or what we think we see? Does it change anything, or is it almost like we're being convinced that there's no preconceptions?
Yeah. It does feel like someone trying to convince us of their innocence, right? Like the first few lines that you're angry at me, it seems like, or unhappy with me for some reason, but I have no preconceptions. I'm not coloring anything that you see, and this comes later, but I'm not being cruel either, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the second line I think is interesting, because it is, whatever you see, I swallow immediately. So what are your thoughts on that one?
I was very confused by the use of the word swallow, and maybe I think it might be explained later on in the when we talk about the mirror staring at the wall. It might become a bit clearer perhaps, or there's an interpretation there that I like to use for the word swallow. But mostly, yeah, like we know that we're talking about a mirror here, and so it, instead of saying reflecting, it's saying I swallow what I see. So I think at this point I'm just curious.
Yeah, for me, what I had written down was that it's immediate. So what we we stare into and we see immediately what we are faced with. Now that we've read it, I wonder if the swallow part has any link to the second to the last line, which is, in me she has drowned a young girl. I wonder if swallow, like water.
Swallow your time, your thoughts about yourself. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I'll talk about a little bit more about swallow when we get to the last few lines. But I like that. I like that you pointed out immediately. I had a snarky note to myself about only as controlled by the speed of light. But other than that, the immediately also, I didn't notice that before. But that's also interesting. That I guess maybe it's still in the argument building department that I'm not spending time adding any color to this. It's just I'm sending it, or I'm devouring it. I am so eager for this that I'm devouring it. Yeah.
I think devour is a good way to put it. Whatever you see, I swallow immediately. It's a good way to put it. I think devour is a good way to put it. So the third line, just as it is, unmisted by love or dislike.
Unmisted, again, so it's nice how we're seeing words that, things that typically a mirror does, but somehow twisted slightly, right? It's still, I guess this is just building on top of the previous lines about, I think this is sort of, the next line is sort of the culmination of the first 4 bits, I think. The end of the defense that I'm not cruel, or I'm not adding any additional layers to what you're seeing. It's claiming that. So, and unmisted is interesting because mirrors tend to mist over, but then like a mirror is not really in control of that. So you think you're not misting it over, but there may be layers in between you and the mirror that that adds things, that adds meaning that the mirror did not intend.
Yeah. The unmisted, the word unmisted, I kind of took as like a mirror being, it has to be flat, it has to be like it can't be damaged. It has to be like a smooth surface, kind of unmisted. It has like clarity. But
Yeah.
that is like it's raw is what I have written down. So as you're mentioning the next one, I am not cruel, only truthful. I think that has to do with what you said, like the defense.
Yeah. I think. Yeah, the defense, right? Like, I don't know that I have much more than that to say about it. Like, when we finish reading through the poem, perhaps we can talk about the high-level interpretations of it. I have a few different ideas that I'd like to discuss, but yeah, at the moment, it just is the mirror. The mirror is a character in this, right? Like, it's easy to... It seems to be a poem about the woman, sure, but I think the mirror is just as much, if not like an equal character, if not even more of a presence in the poem, which you could argue is obvious given that it's from the mirror's point of view, but we don't really necessarily think about it as a character, if that makes sense,
Yeah, it does. And I think to that point, the next line, the eye of a little god, four-cornered, I think the little god, almost like the power that we give it, or the power that this person is giving it, the power that we give to that reflection, kind of like we put so much emphasis on what we see.
Yeah. I think that is the bit that I thought was very interesting in the first bit of this poem. Exactly what I had as well, Steve, the power that we give the mirrors, the ability to control what we think about ourselves, that gods maybe have, and then the mirror is given that control. And it seems to have some sort of... I'm curious about the mirror's feelings in this. Like, is it feeling arrogant about it, or is it thinking that the woman thinks of her that way? Maybe not. It's probably just the mirror's perception that I am almost a god in this regard. It's exerting the power over her.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it too. So the next line, most of the time I meditate on the opposite wall. What were your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I guess I just got the sense that it's bored. Again, I think this makes sense to me with all four lines put in conjunction, the next four lines together. But to meditate on the opposite wall, it's just, at this point, it's just that we have a bored mirror who stares at the opposite wall to while away its time.
Yeah, I took that as almost like it's always lingering, like it's always there.
Nice. Yeah, I like that.
So the next one, it is pink with speckles. I have looked at it so long. I wonder why pink is used in this one.
That's interesting. I didn't think of that. I focused on the speckles, that it has deformities, and just like, so it in the next line, the mirror is saying, I think it is a part of my heart, but it flickers. So it's reflecting the woman in a very deep sense here, in that the woman staring at the mirror and focusing on all its presumably focusing on all her deformities, and the mirror seems to be doing the same thing, that she's staring at it, that the mirror is staring at the wall for so long that it starts to think that that's what it is.
Interesting.
But that's a good question
so
about pink. Did you have any ideas on why pink?
I thought maybe like femininity, or like but I don't want to. It seems a little too obvious, So I don't want to. It seems like that would be too easy. So the next one is, I think it is part of my heart, but it flickers.
I think what I said before about the the mirror doesn't think that it is who it is. It's what it's seeing reflected in itself. Just like the woman might be giving the mirror enough power over her that she starts to think what she sees in the mirror is the real thing. And I had another point to add to that, but I forgot. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. It'll come back to you. So the next one is faces and darkness separate us over and over.
Yeah. I think, what did you think of that?
This one, I thought faces and darkness separate us over and over. I thought we go and look in the mirror and then we move away from it. And while we're not there staring at it, does it really see anything?
Does it while we're not there? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like the impression I had was of the mirror staring at the wall, and I don't know, like I started by saying I think the mirror's bored of staring at the wall, right? But then it feels at this point like it's saying that I want to keep staring, but other things are interrupting me and like changing the image. And I guess we don't know how it feels about it, but it's almost like, they're getting in my way, kind of like when we look in a mirror and if someone comes in the way and things are not, and we don't see, like something comes between us and the mirror, something's coming between the mirror and the opposite wall.
Also had written down that we're always searching for our own identity in the mirror. But yeah, just so many different interpretations.
Did you get that from the faces and darkness separate us over and over?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like within ourselves too. We search for identity. We look to this little God for it to tell us who we are or like what we are. Like we search for our own identity in what we see, not because we give it so much power. So then we go to the next stanza, which is, I think, a transition. So it goes, now I am a lake, a woman bends over me.
Yeah. I think this was the line that changed the most for me across my many rereads of the poem. Knowing how it ends. Like, at first I thought she was talking about a literal lake, and there's this contrast between the clear perfection of a glass mirror, which the first stanza is presumably talking about, and then the lake is a shaky surface. So for some reason, this woman ended up at a lake. Sure, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But then I started to think, since it ends with how in the lake she drowned a young girl and became an old woman, I'm starting to think that the woman's maybe losing her sight, and so the mirror is not clear to her anymore. It's shaky. The images she's seeing are shaky, so she's losing her eyesight. That's why it's a lake, no longer a clear perfection mirror.
Yeah, because I think the lake. Yeah, because I kind of took that too. As there's a reflection, but it's a natural. The lake is natural, like it's water. So yeah, that line kind of threw me off. It's a big change from.
Yeah, I think my final interpretation is that it's still the same mirror. The woman just can't see it very clearly anymore.
Oh, okay.
Because she's losing her sight.
Oh, okay. I didn't think of it that way. So that actually makes sense with the next line. Searching my reaches for what she really is.
Almost like she's squinting and trying to figure it out, which would be true, like even if it was just a literal lake, right? Which makes it really beautiful, I think.
Oh wow, I didn't think of it that way. You just totally changed my whole perception of this whole thing. So the next line, then she turns to those liars, the candles or the moon.
Yeah. This one also threw me off quite a bit the first few times. But I think now what I think of it is since she can't see clearly, like I'm just building on that story now, that she can't see clearly, so she needs the lights, or she can't see clearly, so she's trying to turn the lights on in some fashion by maybe pulling the curtains open or turning or lighting the candles to get more light so she can see more clearly, because she doesn't like what she sees, or she's not able to see clearly enough.
Wow, I view this totally different now, because when I first read that, because when I first read it, I was thinking about that it's surface level, and the candles of the moon. I wasn't sure about that, or like almost like natural light. The moon being a natural light, but I like your thoughts on that too. Like she's an older woman. Wow. Okay. Yeah, totally changed everything. So I see her back and reflect it faithfully.
Yeah, it's this. The mirror is no longer building a defense, right? It seems like a more grown-up version of the mirror. Like I'm just doing my duty. I'm just doing what I'm meant to be. Kind of like I don't know. Did the mirror grow up with the old woman?
Kind of like it's like I kind of took it, looking at it from that perspective is reflect it faithfully. Like it's almost like they've become friends, or like there's like an acceptance there.
Yeah,
okay.
I like that, the acceptance. Like, yeah, like the woman's also, well, not exactly, because the next line she's still complaining, but the mirror at least seems to be more adjusted to its role.
Yeah, I think. Okay. It makes sense again with this next one. She rewards me with tears and an agitation of hands. And then what you mentioned earlier about old age makes sense about, the shaking and tears.
I guess she doesn't like that she looks older than she feels.
Yeah. Yeah, because I had, all I wrote down for that is just emotion and the power that we've given to the reflection. But I think it makes a lot more sense now that you mentioned that, because I did not even think of that first time reading it. So the next one is, I am important to her. She comes and goes.
What do you think of that? Like the I am important to her bit stuck out to me quite a bit, and I think that sort of led to some other interpretations of the poem that I like to talk about when we finish the line by line reading. But it seems it could be either a continued assertion of power over her, right? Like the silver and exact mirror had over her, like called itself a god, but now it's sort of dialed down to I am important to her. But is it just the mirror convincing itself because it wants to feel important, or is it still exerting the power that I have this power, asserting the power over the woman?
So almost like, so could it also be to that point? Could it also be that the woman has conceded, or like kind of like given up, or kind of like accepted, or like almost like a defeat?
Yeah.
In a way.
So the mirror's feeling less important, and so needs to assert back control in this way. So it's like, yeah, she still comes and goes, so I am important to her.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, because honestly, on that one, under my notes for that line, I just put a question mark because I had no idea. So each morning, it is her face that replaces the darkness.
Yeah, this is also, I'm just now thinking of this. I don't remember what I wrote down for it, but it feels like comparing with the previous one where the mirror thinks that the pink wall with the speckles is its identity, and other people are interrupting the flow, interrupting its jam because like it enjoys staring at that wall. Now she's identifying more with the woman, that each morning it is her face that replaces the darkness. So it's like, it almost feels like it's the mirror's reason for existence. Not quite, but that might be over-interpreting it. But I think it feels more concrete what the mirror thinks it is. Earlier, it was just random faces and darkness, but now it's darkness that gets replaced by her face.
So to that point, could it be that the mirror has no power if we're not there to look into it?
Yeah, because the mirror is only as important as when people give it the power. I like that. Yeah, that's great.
I have no idea what I'm talking about. It's kind of like if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound kind of thing?
Yeah. It only has the wall to give it. The wall then has power over the mirror, and then we can write a poem called The Wall.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So the next one is so this one, in me she has drowned a young girl, and in me an old woman.
Yeah, this I think I guess a passing of time. It just feels like a nice full stop or period to everything that's been said so far. No.
Yeah, for this one I had written down like time wasted. Like attention given, time wasted.
Yeah, drowned a young girl. Yeah, that makes sense. I like that.
And so the last one rises towards her day after day like a terrible fish.
Go ahead.
So I get the first part, right? So rises toward her day after day. Okay. Like a terrible fish.
I was so thrown off by that. The only explanation I have for that is it's now a lake, so it has fish, and fish rise terribly.
Day after day. So I guess if we look at it from the mirror or the reflection being powerful, so does the mirror see the person looking into it as like a fish, as like a helpless creature, or like less than maybe? I have no idea. I don't know.
I guess. Oh, is it that a fish outside of water is useless, and this woman maybe loses her identity if she rises out of the lake? But then it almost feels like the fish is out to attack her somehow, right? It's interesting. I like to know what's up with that fish. It can't be just because of the lake. I'm sure there were many, many ways to conclude this without needing to go back to that lake situation. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Let me see if I can find something about the fish. See if I can cheat and look at what the fish might be. But while I look for that, what were your kind of overall thoughts on this one?
I did want to talk about the use of the word swallow before I forgot to do that when we went over the lines that I had in mind. So it feels like in the first stanza, the last four bits where the last four lines, where the mirror is staring at the pink wall with the speckles, it feels like it has and it knows that it has an empty existence. And so it is devouring anything that comes its way with the woman. And then like using that to build into the second stanza where she starts to, where the mirror is starting to feel like the woman is part of her identity, I think, part of its identity. So she's seen so much of her now that the woman the mirror sort of making peace with the woman as someone that she needs to greet every day. I keep saying she for the mirror, but I think it's appropriate, right? Like I'm accidentally saying that, but it feels appropriate. Yeah.
So I did find something on this it's called greatsaver.com. There's a line here about, the slippery and unnerving fish in the poem may represent that unavoidable darker self that cannot help but challenge the socially acceptable self.
Interesting. I feel like we missed the rest of the interpretation about the socially acceptable self in that version.
It looks like, according to the site, overall mirrors a melancholy and even bitter poem that exemplifies the tensions between inner and outer selves, as well as indicates that the preternaturally feminine problem of aging and losing one's beauty.
Yeah.
So I think we're on the right track.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, really, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I meant missed as in don't know the context that they set to get to that line. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there's the obvious-ish interpretation about a woman or anybody, a person, associating their identity with the mirror, right? Having shallow notions of what their identity is, or giving too much power to an external thing for how they feel. But another possibility I thought, and I might be pushing it in both of these interpretations, is it also feels a bit like you would talk about, it's a parent-child relationship, or even just a relationship in, like, with your partner, for instance. You get back what you put into it. You identify yourself with the other person or with your child and what they are able to do or cannot do, and you also see yourself aging, like as they age you age too, or with the child as they grow up you feel like you're aging, or you wring your hands that you can't do all the things that they do. Maybe just I don't know, I don't have children, but I don't know if that's something that parents do, that at losing your youth while they have theirs, maybe there's a mild feeling of that there. So it felt like, and this is why it became such a big favorite. Like, we've only read 3 so far, but I loved the one about the night, acquainted with the night. I love that, and the other poem has always been a favorite. So for this to become a favorite, I think it's a big deal. This was the first time I was getting acquainted with it. So the fact that we can interpret it in so many different ways, I absolutely loved about it. Did you have any other non-mirror interpretations?
Yeah, I just think there's just so many layers that you can kind of pull out of it. But I think just mortality, time, aging, kind of I guess you could all kind of what I took out of it before reading some of the more like in-depth analysis in the last couple of minutes is just like how much time we waste over those things, or how much power we give those things. And we spend so much time thinking about those things, and we come, we get older and we lose those things that we cherish, that we give so much power to. We prescribe, we sign this, we give appearances and physical appearances so much power, so much time and attention, that when we get old, almost like you look back and say, now I'm old and all of those things that I was looking for are gone, and time is fleeting, right? So whether you liked what you see or you didn't, it all goes away.
Yeah. I like that. And I think what you said is also interesting, because it's not necessarily just mirrors that this could be about, right? It could be anything that we associate our identity or sense of self with when we're younger, and then as we grow old or more mature, it's no longer important. Or you might feel like, I don't have the ability to do this anymore as I grow older, and you feel like you're losing your identity or sense of self still. Like, this is very obviously about your looks, but it could be other things. And then also maybe you're making peace with it. It doesn't feel like the woman has made peace with it, though. It feels like she's just still angry about getting old.
Yeah, I think to that line, to that point, she rewards me with tears and an agitation of hands, kind of like the tears, sadness, and bitterness, agitation of hands. So I think earlier we talked about age, and maybe that's just a consequence of getting older, like the shaking or not being able to hold steady. But it could also be, like you said, like anger or like bitterness, and still holding on to that the desire to want to love what you see. And looking back, I guess, does anybody really? I mean, does anyone love what they see every single time? I mean,
No.
Maybe somebody does.
I don't know. Maybe. There are so many pictures of myself that when I took them and I saw them immediately, I was like, that sucks. And then several years later, I look at it and I was like, that's a good picture. I wish I could look like that now. And, yeah. So the drowned feeling feels apt, except maybe in my case, it's a FaceTime camera.
Yeah, the drowned part I really love. Wow, what a poem. In me, she has drowned a young girl. Well, she does. You mentioned earlier you described the mirror as a she, but in me, she has drowned a young girl, and in me, an old woman.
Yeah,
Wow.
The mirror's gaining her identity, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which was your favorite line, or favorite 2-3 lines? Top 3 lines.
Let's see. I think if I had to pick a couple, or I had to pick just because of, so I think the first line, well, I do like the eye of a little god, four-cornered.
Mm-hmm.
From the first stanza, I'd pick that one. From the second one, I would maybe say, in me, she has drowned a young girl, and in me, an old woman. I think that's such a powerful line.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
What about you?
I think those are my favorites too, but I'll pick slightly different ones just so we have more variety. I like then she turns to those liars, the candles or the moon, because I had to think about it for so long to figure out what it means. But also I think I just like the mention of candles or moon. It makes the whole thing prettier somehow. I also like, most of the time I meditate on the opposite wall, because I think the mirror that she has given so much power over her, the woman, is also leading an empty existence. Like kind of.
Oh.
I'm just thinking now about this comparison, but kind of like in social media, right? Like things, you seek validation from people who are similarly seeking validation.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's wild. I also like the last line, rises towards her day after day like a terrible fish, just because it's like a terrible fish.
Yeah.
That they can, I think it gives it just adds so much to the entire poem. Those four words.
Yeah. Like a terrible fish. It's amazing. It's like, even if you don't know why the hell that line is there, you can understand what it means on a very deep level. It's really cool.
It's crazy. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful poem.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah. I think Lady Lazarus will be even. That's a long one.
Oh.
It's a long one.
May need a different strategy than the line by line for that.
Yeah, I think so. Unless you want to do like 2 hours long. But yeah, there's a lot of lines in that one. But well, I'm glad you had time to.
This was a lot of fun.
Because I was afraid
Thanks for having
doing
me.
this by myself. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I filled up 5 journal pages. No, 10 journal pages on it. So I had to talk about it.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll do Lady Lazarus next.
You're going to need more than 5 pages. I tried to fit all on one page, and that was not successful. But I think when you mentioned about the lake and the old swallow, I think that gave me a totally different perspective than what I had originally. So yeah, it's just hearing different, it can just change the way you perceive something.
It's kind of like that, the image where it could be a crone or a young woman and you see one or the other. I think for a long time I thought like she's literally in a forest somewhere or something, and I couldn't figure out why. But then once the old woman interpretation clicked, I was like, everything makes sense now. It's almost like a puzzle piece fitting together. That was really cool.
Wow. Oh, crazy. Well, cool. So thank you again for doing
thanks
this.
for having me, Steve. And,
of course, anytime.
And I love listening to these episodes, so thank you for doing them on the podcast.
It's a little nerve-wracking by myself, so I'm glad that you had time, because this is going to be a rough one. But in the meantime, where can people find you?
You can find me on the Patreon forum because I hang out there a lot. I have a YouTube channel called Reading by the Rainy Mountain if you'd like to listen to any of the tons of book discussions we've been having there. And yeah, you can find links to my podcast and other ways to reach me on the About page.
Awesome. And I'll have those links all down below. But so cool. You can find me on pagejoin.com. It's the best place. That's like the only place I go to now. So, but awesome. So cool. So until next time, we'll talk to everyone very soon.
Bye.